Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second session of Law School and Beyond, a series dedicated to helping students decide whether or not law school is the right track for them and decide what you can do with a law degree once you graduate. My name is Nikki Wu, and I will be one of your co-moderators for today's discussion around corporate law. Please feel free to use the Q&A box for any questions you might have.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zhang, and I will be your other co-moderator today. So we are joined today by Saat Alety, who is the Director of Federal Affairs and Public Policy at Allstate. And we are also joined by Miya Patel, who is the Vice President at Fulcrum Public Affairs. So before we officially begin, could you guys please introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit more about your background, and what made you decide to go into corporate law?
Maya, I will defer to you to go first, please, as you are the attorney out of the two of us. So
yeah, no worries. And Saat is 100% part of our legal team. Yeah, honorary, as you'll soon hear. In terms of going to law school, there's so many different angles and facets you can take with it, outside of law school or in law school. So that being said, my name is Miya Patel. Nice to be with you guys. Thank you, Nikki and Alice, for putting this together. It's wonderful, and really appreciate you inviting myself and Saat to be with you and your team today. Like I mentioned, I am a lawyer by trade. I went to school in Miami, so University of Miami, where I focused largely on human rights law and antitrust. So a little bit of both, really, immigration, human rights, and antitrust, which is kind of like a really unique combo, but that's kind of where my space of interest were. As I'm sure many of you know, being in law school, there's no direct, like, I'm majoring in this or majoring in that. It's you craft your own essential focus areas. And so those are the ones I chose through law review and through clinics that I participated in while during my time at law school. Following that, I had the privilege and honor of being a Clinton Foundation Fellow, where I served as an attorney for the Harlem Legal Aid up in New York. So really one-stop shop, right? Being a lawyer for everything from landlord-tenant issues, which there's a lot in New York, as I'm sure you guys all know, and to whether it's SNAP benefits, VA issues, domestic violence issues, violence against women issues, or immigration issues, right? So it was a one-stop shop. From there, I graduated, and now I'm told I can't really even say this anymore, the worst possible time, because I know now is also another really horrible time, but graduated during the economic crisis. And so in terms of seeking employment at the time, I was able to go into corporate law because something called the Dodd-Frank regulation came out of Congress here in DC, where Saat and I are, that really, really changed the way that banks conducted their business. And there was a strong need for lawyers who could interpret regulation to come in, not with any pre-understanding of Dodd-Frank, but really just an understanding and analytical perspective that you guys all will learn while you're in law school, to really interpret it and guide these firms and how best to implement. So I was part of like a team of 6 that created what is now a team of hundreds or thousands over at Goldman Sachs, the Dodd-Frank Volcker team, tasked with implementing the large regulation that came out of DC. Spent about 4.5 years there, at which point I was able to take that knowledge and guidance and shift it and bring it down to DC, where I served as a legislative counsel to Chairwoman Maxine Waters, and did financial services there, worked for a few members, which we can go into, and now currently advise financial services companies, as well as a plethora of other corporate entities, both on legal matters as well as congressional matters.
sure, happy to jump in, and thank you, Nikki, for the invitation for us to join, and thanks, Alice, for hosting today. And I got to say, we've got an all racial minority, people of color panel, which is a fantastic thing to see, and we need to see more of it. So very glad to be with you guys. I am the non-attorney speaking to the group, so I'll maybe proudly or not proudly declare that from the start. But Saat Alety, as Nikki mentioned, Director of Federal Affairs and Public Policy for Allstate. So that means I am the Chief Government Affairs professional for the company in Washington, D.C. I'm responsible for maintaining Allstate's relationship with Congress, the administration, and the numerous federal agencies and regulators that impact our business. I've been with the company for 2.5 years, and while I am not a lawyer, I am housed in Allstate's legal department. And we have one of the largest legal corporate departments in the United States. We have 1,800 legal professionals in our department. Insurers sue a lot, and they're sued a lot. so we need a ton of attorneys around. We are also a highly regulated industry and therefore have plenty of reg lawyers, government affairs lawyers working on the state and federal level. So in my role as a lobbyist, as a government affairs professional, I actually report up to a deputy general counsel at Allstate who reports all the way up to our general counsel. We have a new general counsel at Allstate. Her name is Rhonda Ferguson. Highly recommend anyone watching look into her background a little bit. African-American female attorney, now leading one of the largest corporate law departments in the United States. So prior to my time at Allstate, I spent roughly 6.5 years as a congressional staffer working on Capitol Hill. I worked for 2 different members of the House of Representatives, and most recently, United States Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. I worked on a lot of banking and financial regulatory issues, housing, insurance, securities markets during my time on Capitol Hill. And as Maya mentioned, the Dodd-Frank Act, which really changed the financial, regulatory, and legal landscape dramatically. That was around the start of my career, also the 11 years I've been in Washington, D.C. So again, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to the discussion.
So both of you guys have really impressive backgrounds that you kind of just detailed, and you also described a little bit what you guys do at your jobs. But I was just wondering if maybe you could describe what a day in your life looks like for the audience.
Sure, I'll maybe go first as you know, currently being in a corporate law department, but obviously Maya has great experience being in Goldman Sachs's corporate law department. But from a government affairs perspective, and you have 2 government affairs professionals on this call, right? We spend a lot of our time talking to people in government, policymakers, lawmakers, so members of Congress, state legislators, their staff, governors and their staff. We spend a lot of time communicating with the regulatory community. So if you think about on the federal level, the SEC, the various cabinet departments, the OCC, independent regulators like that. So really it's our job to represent the company's perspective on laws and regulations, try to foster the most favorable legal and regulatory environment we can for us to do business and for our employees and for our customers. So that is most of the day-to-day. We serve as kind of the translator from how our internal client feels about things to people in government. And the reason why I say translator is we also do that in reverse. So when laws, when rules, when regulations are promulgated by people in government, it's our role as attorneys, as lobbyists, to actually translate the impact and ramifications of government action on the company. So we spend a lot of time talking to our internal client, our executives at Allstate about what it is the government's doing and how it's going to impact the business and how we should maybe react. So from a government affairs legal standpoint, that's what our day-to-day is. But again, I mentioned we have 1,800 attorneys and legal workers at Allstate. We have a lot of different departments in our law and regulation group. So government affairs is just one of them. That's the department I'm in. We call it government and industry relations. We have a corporate governance group and investor relations. So we have a group of attorneys dedicated to maintaining Allstate's relationship with its board of directors, with its investors that prepare, proxy statements, quarterly reports. We have a big division of lawyers who solely focus on that work. And I think it's fascinating stuff, especially considering all the discussion about ESG and shareholder rights right now. We have a large legal department focused on dispute resolution services is what we call it at Allstate. But basically, when an insurer is not getting along with their policyholder, when a policyholder feels like a claim should have been paid or didn't get paid quick enough or not enough, when Allstate is entering into litigation around paying a claim or not, we have plenty of attorneys that deal with that. And there are, probably 3 other law departments we have on top of that. Innovation law is another really exciting one. It's kind of new how the company has formed it together, but it's a lot of attorneys working on data privacy and privacy laws. So I think for anyone who's watching that's interested in that world, that is just absolutely booming right now, the need for legal advice when it comes to all of these issues surrounding data privacy in a business setting. So that's a little bit of more background that you asked for, but I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, and I'll try to follow that. And so I can kind of give a day in the life of both what I do now at Fulcrum Public Affairs, which is a really unique perspective and kind of speaks to the conversation of like you can do so many things with your law degree, and then actually when I served as a corporate legal counsel for Goldman. So I'll start with my Goldman days. It might be a little bit more relevant here. So like I mentioned, I was a team of 5 or 6 for a small little firm called Goldman. Looking to implement Dodd-Frank, as Saat mentioned, when that came out of DC, really to revamp and change the way that our financial structure and systems work, right? So my job at that time was not necessarily to have come in as an expert in Dodd-Frank, but really to use the analytical skills that you guys are learning in law school and really go through and figure out what departments within the larger scope of Goldman Sachs, which for those of you, I'm sure you see it down in FIDI, it's a very large company, right? It's got its hands in housing, in commodities, in different countries, you name it, they kind of have a hand in all of that. So understanding how each line of these regulations impact different lines of business, different international entities. My job then, right, was to make sure I look at the larger scope of all our different departments and understand how can we make sure they're in compliance with this, right? Having those conversations. So to Saad's point that you have an entity like Allstate or Goldman, it's not necessarily just one legal department. There's legal departments speaking to different facets of the business. So, I mean, something as, generic as human resources lawyers, right? Everybody needs to have those. There's the labor lawyers, to something more specific to Goldman that you may think, which is contract law, right? Something that I dabbled in. So this is the contracts that broker dealers such as Goldman are having with the financial structures who are looking to do business and contract with Goldman Sachs, right? So it really spans that spectrum, but then also looking at international law as well, which I dabbled slightly in, but not as much as other friends of mine at the team, knowing how do we comply with international law? How do we comply with EU regulations? At the time, EU was still starting to ramp up even more, but now, as you guys see, EU's kind of led the way in financial regulation and data privacy regulation ahead of what we're doing here in the United States. So figuring out how do we comply with that, but then do we make that decision then to comply across the United States as well, knowing that that might come down the pipeline. And that's kind of where work that Saat does and that I do now in this current role really plays hand in hand with working with our Gov Affairs team, is understanding, is this coming down the pipeline? Now, these types of regulations, these kind of entities coming down the pipeline, in the United States, so that when we're looking to implement, are we looking just to implement in those countries, or should we do it business-wide? So that's kind of a little bit of flavor on Goldman. I can go into more, but I don't want to talk your ear off. And then just transitioning to what I do now. So I serve as the vice president over at Fulcrum Public Affairs. Previously, like I mentioned, I served as ledge counsel on both on judiciary and financial services. What I've done is I've taken my experiences similar to what Saat's done and been able to offer it to my clients. In a world in such as this example, I would serve as a multi-client, and Saat, for example, could be a client where I'm advising him and his team on best practices and corporate practices as it relates to issues ranging from voting rights, as you're seeing as we have these conversations coming up right now, voting rights and how corporate engagement's happening there, to something more specific to their business model, maybe like electronic vehicles or AV and data privacy that's specific to like Allstate's business model. So hopefully that was a little helpful. Nikki, I'll pass it back to you before I keep talking.
Thank you so much for those responses. So we were wondering, what kind of companies or groups of individuals do you interact with at your job daily?
Yeah, I can take that one. So in my current role, right, like I mentioned, I'm multi-client. So I serve not just one entity. For example, I serve Tesla, which we all heard about, right? So I could be working with corporations such as them and really understanding policies as it relates to electronic vehicles, data privacy, climate change, all those things that really are relevant to an entity such as Tesla. But then on the other hand, I'm working with maybe a nonprofit. I'm sure you guys are all seeing your mayoral candidate, Andrew Yang. He has a group called Humanity Forward, which is helping to get checks into people's hands during this COVID pandemic, right? Working with nonprofits like them, but also figuring out how do we engage with the corporate structure to help push the needle on groups such as Humanity Forward, to the likes of JP Morgan, who I also represent, right? And figuring out how they can craft their message. And a lot of work that I do is not just on the financial corporate guidance, which is still helpful and we can get into, is also the corporate governance and social justice issues that we're seeing play out every single day on the news. I'm sure, I mean, your generation does a 10 times better job than our generation's ever done in terms of talking about these things and really pushing the needle so these corporations are having to talk about these things. And that's kind of where I look at my role, right? Understanding what the Constitution and what the rules currently say as it relates to voting rights, as it relates to social justice, George Floyd Act, all of these things, and guiding the likes of JP Morgan or the Teslas of the world on how to engage and how best to have a corporate presence and corporate voice that's needed.
So from the perspective of an in-house corporate lawyer, you know, first and foremost, I would say it's a team-oriented kind of work. So you certainly need to be comfortable working with others. We have teams of attorneys that work on certain cases, certain issues. So certainly, like, you're going to be interacting with your peers and other lawyers a lot. You're going to be interacting a lot with your internal business leaders. And at Allstate in the law department, we literally call them our clients. Even though we all work for the same company, that's just the terminology that it's given, because it's literally, you're servicing these internal business leaders like they are clients. I mean, similar to someone at a law firm is treating their clients. I mean, like, you're even like recording the hours and the resources you're spending on servicing the client, and you're spending a lot of time talking to them about what their issues are, what it is you need to solve for them, and where they need counsel. And you know, I see that over and over again, whether it's, you know, as big as, hey, this policyholder's suing us and we need to address it, or as small as, hey, we have an employee at Allstate whose, you know, work status is about to expire. You know, can you advise us on how we can try to get an extension on their visa? Like, that's something I happen to be working on right now. So you spend a lot of time talking to your internal business leaders, AKA your clients. Last thing I'll say, you certainly spend a lot of time interacting with outside counsel. Gosh, Allstate probably has more outside law firms that I can count on two hands and 2 feet, to be honest with you. I mean, big corporations in particular are going to have plenty of outside counsel representing them in a variety of you know, ways. And you're going to spend a lot of your time interacting with those folks, making sure that they're representing you, making sure that they're serving your internal clients and business leaders. And that's a big part of the job.
And then if I could just follow up there really quick with something Saat mentioned, and I think is really relevant for the conversation on corporate law, is that, again, there's so many ways to come at corporate law. So you have entities such as Allstate, who not only have the thousands of lawyers in-house that are working on these issues, but then, like he mentioned, they also have contracts with hundreds of or large amounts of law firms where across the country, right? So just when you're thinking of corporate law, it's not necessarily being in-house, but there's also ways to interact with these entities such as Allstate by working at a firm who then has Allstate as an ongoing client. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and there's so many other ways to answer your question, Alice. I'll try to give the most encompassing one, but, you know, for example, if you're in that corporate governance and investor relations group that I'm talking about, you're probably spending a lot of your time talking to ISS and Glass Lewis, the two proxy advisors that kind of make recommendations on shareholder votes. I mean, that's a lot of what their day encompasses. If you're in a government affairs division like I am, you're spending a lot of your time talking to people in government. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different answers you can give to your question, but I think the number one common theme is you're spending a lot of time talking to your internal clients, your business leaders. That is number one that every corporate lawyer is doing.
And I know, Saat, you mentioned that you're working in government affairs now. Could you explain a little bit how that differs from maybe what people imagine as the more traditional version of corporate law?
Sure. I think the best answer to that would be it's an inherently political exercise, right? I mean, you know, a lot of the law school experience is academic. A lot of the corporate law experience is maybe a little bit bloodless, but ultimately when you're working in government affairs as a lawyer, as the vast majority of lobbyists at Allstate are, it is a political exercise. Sure, the law says one thing, you want it to say one thing, you think it means one thing, but you're dealing with political actors and you're dealing in a political environment, and that takes a certain amount of pragmatism is maybe the best way I can put it. And that's kind of a natural clash I actually see between our government affairs attorneys and our non-government affairs attorneys who want to do everything, by the book, dot the I's, cross the T's, and you got to kind of meet halfway in between. So definitely a more political world in government affairs versus being a non-government affairs corporate attorney. And then another thing I will say, unpredictable. Like my day-to-day, every day can be very unpredictable as to what I'm going to have to address. Obviously, in government affairs, we react a lot to current events and what's going on in Washington or the state capitals. And I think some of my other corporate attorneys at Allstate have a little bit more of a predictable day-to-day, which some people really enjoy.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think that kind of speaks what Saat just mentioned in terms of like the political aspect, right? So having worked when I was in corporate law, I had a very predictable day in the sense that like I knew what my job was to implement this regulation at the firm. That being said, there was a set law. The Dodd-Frank had passed both the House, the Senate was signed into law. The political concept that Saat's referring to, right, is that, and that which I engage to now, being being in the political space, is that we're helping shape the law that the traditional corporate lawyer may be implementing subsequently, right? So at this point now, when I'm advising at JP Morgan on how they engage on, for example, the reshaping of LIBOR, which played a huge role in the economic crisis, right? I was like, that is going to shape how corporate lawyers, or like the Mayas of yesterday at Goldman, really implement that and advise internal clients. So internally, their internal Goldman Sachs folks on how to implement that. And again, that's the law that we're helping, like Saat and I, in our political role now, help shape by advising my clients, Saat advising internally, and then having those engagement with political officials on the Hill and in the administration.
So given both your backgrounds and everything, we were wondering if there's any way for students or people to get involved in legal affairs and like corporate law without like actually getting a law degree officially or more traditionally, and if there are any other different ways to get in corporate law in general.
Well, I think I'll start with sending it to Saat, because I think Saat's a perfect example for everyone on this call of did not go to law school, saved the loans, which I have, and does just as good a job as probably any other lawyer or government affairs lawyer I know out there. So you have no other better example than the person on this call. So Saat.
Yeah, just to be clear, I did go and get that MBA, so I do still have some student loans, but not as many as you future JDs are going to have. Government affairs as a legal function is a very, I think, unique area by which you can pursue it without a JD. And I will never forget when I interviewed with Allstate's now retired general counsel, who was ultimately the person that hired me. I remember kind of her expressing a little skepticism on, your predecessors have generally always been attorneys and this and that, and like, what would you say to that? And I remember very specifically, I had a great line. I kind of told her, listen, I've been making the laws for this country for the past 6.5 years without a law degree. I certainly don't need a law degree to be able to interpret it and influence them. So that was kind of my line, and it worked on her at the very least. But I will tell you, I don't want to give a false misrepresentation for everyone else who's kind of thinking, can I get into other parts of corporate law without a law degree? I am a rarity at Allstate in being in the legal department without a law degree. And if you look at the vast majority of people that we have intern with us, the vast majority of people that get hired, we recruit straight out of law school, as you can imagine. By and large, I would say like 96-97% of those 1,800 people in Allstate's law department are lawyers. So we obviously you have exceptions like me. We do have administrative roles, paralegal roles. I mean, there are some roles you can pursue without having a law degree. But I think if you're serious about corporate law, you got to be in law school, or you got to be getting your law degree.
Yeah, and I guess I'll give from the perspective of going through the law school experience, right, and having practice, and then also just helping shape law when I was on the Hill as well. I will say that if corporate is an interest of yours, and I'll just pick on the financial services sector because that's a place that Saat and I know very well, there are many individuals who shape the financial services regulations and laws of tomorrow that are not lawyers on the Hill, right? And I worked alongside a lot of those guys and girls. And so that being said, if you are looking at ways in which potentially to engage with corporations, so shaping the way that JP Morgan does their business and all of that going forward, the congressional route, the staffer route, which is more of a policy route rather than a legal route, still allows you to have that touch point with the law, but more from a shaping and advocating perspective and less from a interpretation perspective, which I was fortunate to have done both, and just to the fact that there is that option out there. And, when you look at the Hill, for example, I say a good majority of the folks are lawyers, but a good majority are not, right? And they're also shaping policy, and all that policy that subsequently becomes law, then it's going to be on a traditional lawyer to interpret that.
But there are still some things I struggle with not having a law degree. I would say interpretation and reading legislative language. That is something that is still more difficult for me than it is for my colleagues that are attorneys. So I think the law degree, it still gives you, immensely valuable skills and abilities, and it's a very valuable thing to pursue. So, don't let my exception to the rule be the exhibit. I mean, even the vast majority of people that are in government affairs are attorneys.
Yeah. And I will say, full circle, my focus on antitrust in law school is now paying dividends now, where I may not be practicing law day to day in the courtroom, but I'm advising all of my corporate clients on the rise of antitrust and the way antitrust can play in their corporate structures, whether it's the large tech conversations that you're having, whether it's big banks. Antitrust kind of focuses on everybody and really kind of encompasses everyone. So I'm still finding ways to leverage my law degree, even if I'm not necessarily representing them in court. I'm advising them from a policy perspective, leveraging my knowledge from law school.
And I know both of you guys kind of had like really windy career paths, I suppose, going from one career path to the other. And so how would you guys really describe what made you decide to choose working in government affairs or choose working in corporate law?
So sure, I'll try and jump in. I mean, honestly, I'm a bit of a product of the era that I graduated in and got out of. And for young folks who are maybe watching this that are in law school, that are in undergrad, right, coming out of school, COVID-19, the economy greatly depressed. I mean, some of that had an impact on my decisions. The financial crisis was very raw, and I think as I was coming out of undergrad in 2010, I had a great interest in governance, politics, why what had happened, and I had a desire to come out to Washington D.C. and I kind of took it from there. I think corporate advocacy, corporate lobbying was always an end goal of mine. I didn't have it exactly mapped out as to when I would get there, but that was kind of always the long-term goal. And in between, I filled in the blanks. So you can have a point A that you're at, you can have a point Z you want to get to, but you really have no idea what B through Y are going to look like, and that's okay. I think for our generation, and see, that's nice, Maya. I'm putting us and Nikki and Alice in the same generation. I hope you like what I just did there. But I think in terms of our generation, those days of you get out of law school and you work for the same company for 30 years, and then you're the general counsel, and then you do that for 5 years and you retire. I mean, those days are coming to a close. And even when I look at the lawyers that we're bringing in Allstate, the people that we're recruiting from law school, they have a great variety of career and educational experiences. And, when I'm looking at some of these fresh lawyers coming to Allstate, they've, clerked with a judge. They've done a summer with big law. They've done a summer with a corporate law department. They've worked in their assistant district attorney's office, right? I mean, like they have such a wide breadth of experiences. And even with Allstate's recent general counsel hire that we made last September, my now new boss, Rhonda Ferguson, she was an outside hire. She had never worked a day in her life at Allstate. She'd worked both in private practice, aka big law, and then had been general counsel or chief legal officer for 2 publicly traded companies before she got to Allstate. And she's again managing now an 1,800 person law department, being completely new to the company. But she was hired based on her not only her legal acumen, but her management experience and the wide variety of experiences she's had in her career. So I think for people that are just getting their start now, that's something to think about. I think the days of I just kind of stay in the same organization and march up the ranks, I think those days have come to an end, especially if you want to be competitive and get ahead.
Yeah, I would say also I have to agree. It's that lumping us all together is very nice. Although I'd say Saat and I probably have a little more wrinkles than Nikki or Alice. That being said, when I graduated from law school, similarly to when Saat did as well, was during that period of time where we all busted our butts in law school, right, to get the grades, get top 5% in your class, which I'm sure many of you on this call are trying to do as well, right? We all got there in some certain degree of success that you make when you craft in law school. And then the crisis happened, right? And that conversation of being able to just get out of law school just because you graduated in the top 5 and being able to start as general counsel at Allstate, those days were just not there for us, for at least from my graduating class, right? And so we had to get creative. We had to find ways. And I think that generation, or my generation, that sense of graduating classes, changed how people entered corporate law, right? Those days of just going straight into in-house were just no more. And you found unique paths that really helped shape your resume that during that time, you may think, oh, how is this helping me get to my end goal of being, general counsel for an amazing, company like Allstate? But you'd be surprised just of what Saat mentioned, right? Is that these people who are coming into Allstate and other companies that I represent, they have a varied and more eclectic resume that really helps shape them, because the idea of corporate law now has really expanded too, right? I think if you asked someone 25 years ago, would corporate law be discussing how the corporation's gonna have a voice on voting rights? I think they probably would have said no. But now when you talk to a corporate lawyer, they're like, we need to be having these conversations on a day-to-day basis. So as corporate laws evolved, so has the way that graduating classes have found a way to enter that space. And I can tell you from personal experience where a lot of my friends now at the age I'm at, which you guys can guess, is, they're all now, a lot of them are in-house, right? At various entities, whether it's Allstate, whether it's, tech firms, whatever the case may be, but they didn't start out there. And whether it's a clerked, whether they were prosecutors, whether whether they worked at a big firm and did big law, right? These are all ways that have shaped them to now allow for them to get to the place that they wanted to be, which was for them was in-house. And for me was to advise them. So now I advise people who look like my friends on how to engage use their corporate in-house knowledge with the political landscape that is DC. So I echo Saat's opinion and just wanted to give you that like personal anecdote that I went through when I graduated law school, and the path that is now getting a job.
I think this kind of relates to one of the questions that popped up in the Q&A earlier. Someone asked, what would ensure my employment in corporate law after graduating?
So I think I kind of piggyback what I was just saying a minute ago, right? Is that gone are those days, like Saat mentioned, where you enter like what our mom and dads maybe have done, right? Is go to a company and work there for 30, 40 years and get your pension. But also gone are those days where people are graduating from these from law school, whether you're top 5% at Yale or a state school, and you're just having a guaranteed role right into a big firm, into a big corporation. Now, those who do get that, that's wonderful and very, very happy for you. But at the same time, what you're seeing is a focus from these big firms and these big entities like a Google, like a Facebook, or like a whoever, wanting someone coming in with learned experience. So take what you think might be a negative of not being able to go directly into in-house at Google and get all the perks of working for Google and turn it into a positive and go out and get those experiences. Even it's something such as what I did, which was I was a Clinton Foundation Fellow working at Harlem Legal Aid. Now, does that really impact my day-to-day now? Not necessarily, but I can tell you it came up in many of my interviews, right? Because it's allowed me and shaped me how I advise my clients today. So the short of it is that every step and every job you have now until that inevitable goal, if it is going in-house at Google, is going to shape you and allow your resume to be distinguished and unique and help you advise in-house as the definition of corporate law changes and evolves.
Yeah, Nikki, I don't have much more to add to Maya's answer in that regard, other than, if you can have a relationship with that company before you're graduating from law school, I mean, that's the ideal path, right? And at Allstate, we take on 1Ls, we take on 2Ls, we have plenty of summer positions. We have a batch of law students that come in every summer, and they actually spend 3 months with the company. They work with every department in law and regulation, and we kind of really get to know them well throughout the summer. So obviously, we don't just staff up with people who have interned with us or spent time with us during law school. We wouldn't have enough people to fill our department. But I think, if you can come in as a known quantity into the application process, that is the best way to go, especially if you know that that's a path you want to take after law school.
So it's obvious that you guys have such successful and established careers now. And we were wondering if there is any advice you would give to your past self when it comes to pursuing your career or a career in corporate law.
So I'll try to address also one of the questions in the chat, Alice, that's pretty similar to that one, but I thought it was an interesting question. They said, any unpopular tips? So, the tip I would give for general career success is, again, like a variety of professional experiences, but also like you cannot just do what you think you're good at or what you think you enjoy and just that be it. Like you cannot just eat a bunch of ice cream and be like, I had dinner. So specifically from a corporate law perspective, right? Again, at Allstate, I've detailed, we have government affairs, we have innovation law, we have corporate governance group, we have investment law. I mean, we literally have a group in our department that's dedicated to securities law and managing the way Allstate invests its money. So there's all of these different departments that we have. Traditionally, the way that I've seen people be successful in their career in the legal field at a big corporation is doing different stints or tours of duty in different departments and really kind of rounding out their legal expertise and what it is they worked on. You can be the data privacy innovation law expert, but you're not going to build a great career in corporate law working in that department or that field for 25 years. It's just not going to happen. And when I look at people like my general counsel, people like our retired general counsel, they have been people that have worked in so many different legal functions within a corporation. And I think lawyers will tell you all the time, like, oh man, I could never do investment law, right? Like I don't understand securities law. It puts me to sleep. Like I'm terrible at working on that stuff. Or, you might get people who tell you, these shareholder proxy statements, I mean, this is so complex. It's not something that I enjoy or want to work on. But ultimately, I think like if you're willing to, again, do your tour of duty, get a more holistic idea of what the corporation's dealing with on the legal front on so many different issues, it'll serve you well in your career. And I think for any career success I've had, Alice, it's been based on, I've done a lot of different things in a relatively short amount of time, which has served me well versus just kind of doing the same thing for the past 11 years.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to what Saad's saying because I absolutely agree. I mean, I've done a ton of things in a short period of time. People jokingly will tell me, and Saad, being a friend, has told me this too. Like I was a human rights lawyer and also a Goldman Sachs lawyer, right? And fortunate to say, I'm still fairly young in my career. So being able to have done multiple different types of law, different types of spaces, what I say to my younger self is, don't worry about just having that plan Z where you're just trying to get to that and stay on one road, which sometimes I had that fear when I was younger. These are all different learned experiences that are going to shape me to where I am today. And I think I didn't have that ease back then. And I wish someone had told me that hey, just because you're doing 5 years here and you're doing a 1-year tour of, landlord tenant law and you're doing a 1-year tour of immigration law, these are all going to shape you and help you in your future on your path to becoming what your Z is, whatever your eventual plan Z is, right? Which I think if I could go back and tell myself one thing is, don't lock in what the plan Z is hard and fast into one small box. Let it evolve as you have these different tours and experiences. It'll allow for a lot less anxiety. But Alice, I think there was I don't know if it's helpful, but there was a question in the box about gap semesters prior to law school as well.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask that because I felt like it kind of tied into the whole path thing that you guys are both kind of addressing. So again, like the question in the chat was asking, do you think that gap semesters prior to law school are common, or if there's any maybe potentially organizations or courses that you recommend students taking to kind of get experiences under their belt before they decide to pursue a career in corporate law?
Yeah, so something I tell my interns all the time, because what's amazing is you have all these wonderful interns come to Congress, and they'd all come and talk to me during a coffee session and be like, I'm going to go to law school next. I'm graduating next year. And my response is always the same. Law school is fantastic, and I learned a lot. And I think I have the analytical wherewithal now because of law school. But that being said, get those experiences beforehand to understand, is this the trajectory you want? Is this space you want? Volunteer, or say it's climate change that you're really passionate about and you want to be an environmental justice like bearer. Go interview or go volunteer at like the Water Conservationist Society and see the different roles that you could play in the larger conversation of climate change, right? If that's something that you're looking at. And honestly, you'll come out of there going like, yes, the legal department within the larger environmental conversation is where I want to be. Or no, actually, I think I can get to that route of being the bearer for climate change and water preservation through the business community or through a different route, right? But something that I think a lot of people don't tell law students is get those experiences at those places that you think that you may want to practice law, and see after the end of that, do you think the law is a way that you're going to reach the goal and the passion and interest that you have? That being said, for me, I did take a semi-gap year, a gap semester. I graduated from undergrad early and had finished up the LSAT and such. And so I went over to the United Kingdom, where I'm happen to also be from, and so dual citizen. And I served as what we call here in America, legislative assistant in the United Kingdom Parliament for a MP. And so I did very similar to what Saat and I did over here in America. I did back then, right after college. And it really kind of shaped my passion and my interest into policy, knowing, and I went into law school subsequently after doing that like 6-month stint over there as legislative assistant, knowing I wanted to do this, but do this necessarily with a legal mindset and here in my home country of the United States. So I really value those gap semesters or gap years because I think it shapes you and helps you go into law school with that perspective, knowing that law school is a academic test all day, every day. Knowing what your passion is invaluable, and going in knowing that this is an area you want to work in, even if it's as big as saying, I want to work in climate change issues.
Yeah, I would just, echo Maya's answer. And I think if you look at the average age of someone who's starting law school, I'm sure that number has crept up significantly from 22 years old, which is maybe what it was 15 years ago. I mean, certainly pre-financial crisis, I just kind of felt like back then it was, you're 22, you graduated undergrad, you're going to law school, no question, right? And we had a lot of law schools in this country to fit that consumer need. So I think things have really changed. I think if you are going to take a gap year, it cannot be, hanging out at the beach every day, right? Like, I think you need to show that you're using your time in a valuable and impactful way. So, for Maya to do some time in the UK Parliament working there, like that's a great example. I don't think it has to be that exotic. I think like if you're spending time with a nonprofit, or if you are starting your own business, or you're pursuing another master's degree that is not a JD, I think those are all fine. But I think ultimately law schools want to see that you spent your time and your energies well with something that developed you into an even better candidate. But I think it's exceedingly common. I mean, certainly in Washington, D.C., we see a ton of young people who they come to D.C. age 22, right out of undergrad. They'll work in politics or policy for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then head to law school. And even longer than that. I mean, I have plenty of colleagues who didn't pursue law school until they were 25, 26, 27, even older. So people do it. Last thing Maya said, she made a very important point. You need to be sure you want to go to law school and it's something you want to do, and it's a commitment you're willing to make. Time, money, energy. If it's something you're passionate about, practicing law. If you have any doubts, take some time off. Work, develop in your career. Pursue other interests. Law schools are not going anywhere. They're going to be there for you 12 months from now. They're going to be there for you 24 months from now. And the opportunities are going to be there for you. So I think like for anyone who's listening to this call that maybe isn't 110% bought in on this is what I want to do, it's okay to wait and consider and do something else for a little bit.
And it's become even more acceptable, right? Like I can tell you, coming from like I guess 1 or 2 generations above you guys, that maybe during that generation, people may have looked at you a little, might have been like, well, why are they taking a gap year? I think I would argue that, and I like I mentioned earlier, I'm from England originally, where gap years are extremely common, and that's kind of where the impetus behind me doing that, and my dad pushing me on that. I would say now in the society that we're in now, and I'm talking to my nieces and nephews who are all going into either med school or law school or wherever the case may be, gap year is extremely common. And I'm so proud to see that our society's evolved to look at that as a chance for you to grow and see, is this the pathway I want to go to? Because when you commit to law school or med school or whatever the case may be, and I'm not trying to scare anyone, that's a commitment on so many fronts, right? That's an intellectual commitment, that's a financial commitment, that's a life commitment. And so being able to go in full-heartedly, knowing that like I spent this past year really confirming that this is the route I want, or maybe this is not the route I want, is it's extremely attractive also as a candidate, right? Like you come in when you do a law school interview, you come in and say, I'm fired up because I just spent the last year maybe at a water conservation place or at like Google, right? And really, really understand that like my passion is data privacy from the legal mindset, and that's what I'm here to do. And I see the evolution of privacy and tech and the world we're going into, and I want to be a part of that. And I know that the legal route is the route that I want to be part of, and that's attractive, right? So having that confidence, and I think that 1 year or that semester that you choose, if you choose to do that route, just only adds to that confidence that you have going in.
So we're now going to shift to the audience questions. So please feel free to type in the Q&A box. So there is one question, and it kind of relates to what we're talking about right now. And it is, what is the best way of networking after graduating from law school?
I've got a good answer to this question. And one thing I think the legal profession does really well is professional networking and professional networking groups. Like I just a couple weeks ago spoke to the National Association of Women Lawyers, NAWL. They were doing one of their annual meetings, and I log on to the Zoom call, and it's hundreds of female attorneys who are all doing various panels and discussions and planning post-COVID meetups. I mean, I think there's so many professional networking groups in the legal profession that are really worth people's time and membership. And a lot of them offer, young attorney membership fee levels. I mean, you're not paying a bunch of money to join these groups, and it will give you an entree to, significantly senior attorneys in private practice, in corporate law, and other parts of the law. So highly recommend the professional groups that exist out there. And there's all kinds for, obviously gender, race, specific kind of practice you're interested in. There's so many great groups out there. So I highly recommend that. And the value of that is, if you're in corporate law and you're spending most of your time talking to attorneys from your company that you work for, then these groups will give you exposure to people that are in big law or people that work in other companies, and vice versa. If you're in private practice or big law, but you want to get to know people that are in corporate in-house roles, then these groups are really valuable.
Yeah, and I'll add, it's funny, I just recently, I'm a member of a lot of these associations, and I was told recently I'm no longer getting the young lawyer rate, so that says something, right? And so that being said, they're extremely invaluable, right? I mean, I equate it to when you're in a club or society in college, and I was definitely that person in college who was wanting to be part of every student government or every group, and meet some of my closest friends and networks and professional networks from that. I say the same about once you graduate. Take that mindset that you have while you're now in undergrad, groups that you may join when you're in law school, that still exists once you're out of school. And just the only difference is you don't have a school structure for you guys all to like kind of rally behind. You now have a career that you're all structured and have in common, right? And these groups have been extremely invaluable for me because they've kind of helped me bounce ideas. And as I go and transition through different career paths, right, I'm able to enter these kind of conversations, whether it's like the Women's Bar Association or the South Asian Bar Association, or like the New York Bar, Women's South Asian Bar Association, right? And like pitch ideas with them that maybe I'm not having internally at my company, because I want to know, how do you navigate this? And having people, learned people on there who've gone through those experiences. It's almost like having 25 mentors and mentees on one Zoom, right? But in pre-COVID times, maybe at a restaurant or something. And so it's beyond invaluable. And I say that as someone who's pre-law for you guys, there are many opportunities for you guys to also attend a lot of their events. I know even as a pre-law person, I was joining a lot of the Florida Bar Association events that, you don't even have to join as a young lawyer fee, right? You're coming in as free because you're just interested in understanding law. So definitely seek those out. The New York has so many great ones, both at the city level, state level, issue level. So again, if maybe intellectual property is your interest of area, there are intellectual property groups, right? Of just lawyers who are either 65 years old and like just head of their game on the issue, or like the 25-year-old that's been doing it 3-4 years and kind of tell you, oh, this is how it is now in this generation. So it runs the gamut, and it kind of helps you guide you also to know, for me at least, that I knew very early on going to a few of those, IP law was not for me, right? So it also helped me in a very big way because I had those conversations with them. And by the end of that networking, I was like, okay, I can check that off. Maybe I'm not really into IP law. So it's helpful in many ways, both professionally and to shape what your interests are once you get there.
And I think, Miya, what you were talking about kind of ties into another audience question, which says, how do you know if corporate law is for you?
Yeah, I think my answer to that would be, you have to be okay with some structure. You have to be okay with working in teams. You have to be okay with figuring out how to navigate, I don't want to say the bureaucracy, but the internal structure of a large corporation. And certainly you have to be comfortable with spending a lot of your time internal facing, talking to your business leaders and your clients. I think like, if all of that sounds appealing, then I think a future in corporate law is certainly something you should be considering.
Yeah, I echo that. I mean, I'll just relate back to my Goldman days, right? You're networking within. And so the amount of time I did, coffees, as you would call them, to just chat with individuals within the larger structure of Goldman Sachs. I mean, I set aside 3 hours every week for that, right? And that's what helped shape me and move me up in the larger entity of Goldman, because there are so many divisions, departments, affinity groups. You're constantly networking within your own company. And if that's something that you enjoy, that thrill, because it is a thrill, but it's also very highly competitive, knowing that you have to continue to stay relevant, right? Making sure that you're meeting with folks who are like, not just in your department, but maybe in the marketing department, the investment banking department, making sure your name is out there. So as you go and continue to grow and the company grows, you're growing with the company. And so if that, entices you, in addition to everything Saat says, then I agree, and internal corporate structure is for you.
So there is a question in the Q&A. Is it okay to change the law branch you're pursuing in the middle of your college or law school experience?
Yes, to both. Pre-law is a misnomer term of art that it can be anything. I mean, I'm just gonna be extremely frank with you. I think some of the coolest law school students that were my friends were the ones that came in with like really interesting backgrounds and degrees. And nothing against anyone who did political science, because I did too. But you can have something from biology to computer engineering to political science and still end up working just alongside them in a corporate law structure 10 years from then, right? So for if that helps anybody out there who is meddling in terms of their interest and career path, just know anything you study in undergrad is going to shape you in terms of your interest and knowledge, but doesn't necessarily close the door on law school. Once in law school, and I think I said this at the beginning of the call as well, very different than your med school friends that you're probably going to have, right? Where they come in, they say, all right, neurology is for me. Like, I love everything about the cranium. Like, I'm going that route, right? And they go down that route. They do residencies in neurology. They're taking all the classes in neurology, right? And for them to switch up at the 9th inning and say, actually, I take that back. I'm really into the stomach and I want to go GI. That's going to have a huge impact for them, right? And they won't be able to make that change. In law school, you can. In law school, there's no neurology, focus or GI focus. It's what you shape your own focus. And so going to what I mentioned and what I did, I have a very unique focus blend that I created because I was really into human rights and immigration work and international work. But then I also was really into this whole merger acquisitions and antitrust space. That's very, very corporate and different than maybe some of the more human rights work I was doing. And I crafted those as interest areas and picked classes based on that. So in a very, very weird way, you create your own major in law school, for lack of better words. So.
That's good. That's great. Sorry, I don't have anything to add. We can move on to maybe one of the other questions.
Okay, so we have another question from the Q&A. Is it worth pursuing an MA or even a PhD right after graduating?
That's a tough question to answer, and I'm not sure if the questioner is saying after law school or after undergrad. I mean, ultimately, you've got to balance, in my perspective, you got to balance two things, right? Like, you have to balance the enjoyment and value you're going to get out of the academic experience, and you got to balance that with where it's actually going to get you in your career and if it's going to help you achieve those goals. And, there might be some people on this call that love going to school, they love getting good grades. Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, every institution out there will take your money. You can go get 7 master's degrees if you really want to. So I think like you have to balance that out with what are your career goals, what are your life goals, what profession and field are you trying to get into? If you're trying to get into something that requires a PhD, then you should absolutely think about pursuing a PhD. I think what I would tell young people is figure out what that, earlier today I said from point A to point Z, figure out what that point Z looks like. You don't have to know what B through Y look like, but you need to kind of have an idea of what your end goal is, and that'll help inform your decisions on what you choose to pursue.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull a Saat there and say I agree with everything Saat said and let you move on to the next question or what we're doing next.
Yeah, so there's another question from the Q&A. In corporate law, how much would you weigh the importance of which law school you attend?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, please.
So for corporate law, so again, and I really want to make sure those on this call thinking of corporate law leave with this thought process is that corporate law and the definition of it isn't just in-house at Google or Allstate. It's also, you could be at Holland & Knight, a large national law firm, and having clients like Google and Allstate, and you work on their issues, right? And you get to engage with folks such as Saat or other individuals every day and from a corporate structure, but being at a big firm. So just bearing that in mind, right? If corporate is your end goal and is your Z, right? In that structure that Saat's referring to, there are different routes to get to that corporate end. That being said, and it may be slightly different now, but at least when I was in law school, it did matter where you went to law school, right? And it does matter how you do in law school. All that also being said, once you're in a law school, you want to make sure you're at a school that you can thrive at. When you're in these classes and you look at the person to the left and left to the right of you, it's very different than when you're an undergrad, right? You can easily distinguish yourself. It's easy to say that everyone on this call is on this call for a reason. You must be extremely smart and driven and probably were that kid that did really well in high school, right? And everyone's trying to beat. So that being said, right, you want to make sure you're going to a law school where you're going to thrive. If you go to Yale and you're at the bottom of your class, how does that pale to, going to, and I'll just use my school, University of Miami, and being the top 5? Well, I can tell you that the top 5 person, right, when these especially at big firms like a Holland & Knight or White & Case, big law firms, they're carrying the fact that you actually did really well when you got into law school, not just the fact that you did really well in your LSAT to get into Yale, but then you graduated at the bottom of your class in the law class, right? So bear that in mind. Your best strengths, your best weaknesses, but it's not end all be all that you go to Yale if you don't think that you'll, once you're there, that you think you're going to be graduating near the top, or at least the top 50%. So hopefully that wasn't too much pressure, but that's how I would apply it. And that's how when I've also interviewed at this point where I'm hiring folks before, I look at their GPA and their abilities at the school and what they did, even more so than where they went, if it's a top 100 school. Now, if you went to a school that, some really affluent individual created and is not ABA accredited, right? That's going to hurt you, right? And then you're going to see a lot of large firms not even want to interview at that point. So also take that under consideration when you're applying.
Yeah, maybe on a closing note, I'll say here, going to a certain name brand law school is not going to create your career for you, especially in corporate law. You might think that there's a correlation between people that go to those name brand schools and then having success in their career is not because they went to school there. It's because they're smart people who work really hard. If I look at the two past general counsels at Allstate, one of them, our current one, went to Case Western Law School, and her predecessor went to University of Oklahoma Law School, which are both fantastic schools, but not necessarily in that kind of name brand group. So you guys are going to be shocked how little where you went to school and what your GPA was and all of that the moment you get into your working career. And a lot of your success is going to be dependent on your work ethic, your work product, your interpersonal skills, your ability to work in a team, your ability to understand the inner politics of an organization. And it's not a direct correlation to your academic credentials. So I don't think there's any law school in America that gets you exactly where you want to go, just as I think going to any law school doesn't completely bar you from where you want to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll end with this just because I do want to hone in the fact that your first job out of law school, if corporate is your route and you're trying to get into big firms, your GPA will matter then. And after that job is when your GPA no longer matters and your school no longer matters. But in the bigger conversation, to hone in my point is do well in the law school you go to, right? And that'll help you get a foot in the door at whatever firm or corporation when you're going in, because they don't have as much work experience on your resume for them to reflect on. Once you leave, at this point in my career, no one's looking at my University of Miami or my GPA. I'm proud of both, but no one's looking at that anymore. So just bear that in mind.
Saat, Maya, thank you so much again for taking the time to talk with us today. I hope everyone who is watching got some wonderful insights to how corporate law works and how their careers were like, and you're welcome to start trickling out. And I hope that everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Nikki and Alice, for inviting us today. I really appreciated it.
Yep. Thanks for having us, and hope you guys have a good weekend.